Hi class and welcome to Lab 3. This will be on the kingdoms Plantae and Animalia. And we'll start talking about Plantae first. So all plants come from a seed. A seed will germinate in the ground and produce the roots that will be below ground. The roots will bring up all the nutrients that the plant needs for photosynthesis. The stem will be above ground, carrying those nutrients to the leaves. And the leaves will be the actual part of the plant for photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the action by which plants take in carbon dioxide and water and create glucose energy for themselves and also for other things to eat. So the roots are the part of absorption. They will anchor the plant to the soil. The stem will be the part of the plant that transports and supports the leaves. So the stem transports all the nutrients to the leaves from the ground, and the leaves will absorb sunlight. So using sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, they will undergo photosynthesis. And again, that's just the chemical reaction of creating glucose and oxygen. The plants are made of stem or xylem. The plant stems are made with xylem and phloem, and we'll talk about the differences between the two. Xylem and phloem pictures are shown here. Xylem and phloem are substances that will make up the stem and the branches of the plant, and they will be a source of transportation for the plant. So xylem will transport water and minerals. So xylem will be kind of in the structure part of the plant from the soil to the leaves. It will support the stem. Xylem is what is found in wood, so in a lot of trees. And xylem will be made of dead cells. Phloem, in contrast, transports sugars. It will be up and down the plant in traveling in that direction. There's no support found in phloem, so we find it in the bark part of a tree, so kind of the outer covering. And phloem is made up of living cells. So I think one of your questions in your worksheet will ask you the differences between xylem and phloem. What are the purpose of flowers? So many plants have flowers. And the main purpose is to attract pollinators. So to provide some sort of kind of pretty shape that will attract a pollinator, whether that's in this case a butterfly or a bee, which is the most important pollinator in the world. So that is the purpose of flowers. And flowers have their own special structure to them. If we look at we'll start at the bottom here, the receptacle contains the ovule or the area of the part that will grow. And then we have the stamen, which contains an anther and the filament. And then the carpel contains the ovary, which surrounds the ovule, and the style, which leads up to the stigma. We have petals, sepals, and the receptacle. And we'll go a little bit through those parts. The pollen itself is the plant sperm. So the pollen will be found kind of along the stigma and anthers. And that's what any sort of insect, whether it's the butterfly or the bee, will kind of pick up and then transport. So the pollen is plant sperm. Pollination is pollen landing on the carpel, which is again any part of the stigma, style, or ovary. And fertilization is when pollen actually reaches the egg. So again, we have these flying insects which are going to transport pollen, and then they will transport pollen whether it's on their backs or any other part of the insect's body. And when the insect comes to another flower, that pollen or sperm will fall off that insect and be transported and touch any part of the carpel. And if it gets to the ovule, then we have a reproduction of the plants. And the ovule is the egg. The purpose of a seed then is for reproduction and dispersal. So seeds take a lot of different shapes and forms. What do we use seeds for? A lot of times we use seeds for eating, whether it's a nut and whether it's toasted corn. Why are seeds sometimes packaged in fruits? So you can see here fruits have a lot of times there's seeds on the inside. And that is food for the young plant. So a fruit will surround kind of the seed that it's carrying as a way to provide food for it. It also, the fruit will attract an animal to eat and carry the seed away, and this will help to spread new plants around as well. What plant part is a fruit? And that is the ovary. So if we go back to the picture of kind of the flower, I'm just going to show you again where the ovary was. So here is the ovary. Again, the ovary is the part of the plant that contains the ovule or the seed that's within that. So that's the ovary. So fruit itself is a part of a plant that is the ovary. So we'll talk a little bit about the differences between fruits and vegetables now. So what are these here? So these, the tomato, the avocado, and bell peppers are actually fruits because they are the part of the plant that contains the seeds. So they are the ovary part of the plant. And you can see that here. So these are the parts of the plants, whether it's a tomato plant, an avocado tree, or a bell pepper plant, they're the part of that plant that contains the seed or the ovary. So we call them fruits. What is a vegetable then? A vegetable is then any other plant part. So the root, the stem, the leaves, or flowers without the ovary. I'm just going to take you to a quick website that tells a little more of the differences between fruits and vegetables. Anything that grows on a plant and is the means by which that plant gets its seeds out into the world is a fruit. So the fruit isn't part of the plant itself, but actually a reproductive part growing from the plant. So tomatoes are fruits, peppers are fruits, pumpkins are fruits, cucumbers. Peas aren't the fruit here, but the pods that carry the peas are string beans, eggplant, okra, olives, avocados. It doesn't seem like a fruit. Avocados are actually single-seeded berries. And you can kind of work your way through this list. Corn are treated like a grain. Zucchini is a member of a gourd family, meaning they're like cucumbers and pumpkins. They're like a type of berry. And then beans and chickpeas are like a legume. So interesting, you can impress your friends and family with the difference between fruits and vegetables. So we'll talk a little about vegetables. Again, they're any other plant part like the roots, stems, leaves, or flowers without the ovary, because again, the ovary part of the plant, the part that carries its seeds, will be a fruit. And here are examples of vegetables. Early plant forms. Here's an example of an early plant form from many, many years ago. Cone-bearing plants give us what products? Cone-bearing plants are often found with large trees providing cones, and cone-bearing trees are also called conifers. And again, cones will disperse the seeds in those trees. The seeds of many types of grasses called grains are important food crops worldwide, whether that's corn or wheat or oats. Spices feature different plant parts as well. So here are different types of spices featuring a different part of the plant. What other things are made from plants? We have different types of berries. Here's an aloe vera, we can have some sort of succulent can produce an aloe vera. And then we'll get to a little bit talking about the kingdom Animalia, chapter 18. And a lot of this chapter will just take us through different groups of the kingdom. The animal kingdom is eukaryotic, meaning they have tiny membrane-bound organelles within them, so they're multicellular, complex organisms. Heterotrophic, meaning they get their food source or energy from someone else. So autotrophic, like plants, they produce their own food source, but animals are heterotrophic, meaning they have to get their source of food from another organism, and they are multicellular. Body symmetry, we'll first talk about the idea of cephalization, means they will all have the ability to form a head. So the prefix cephal has to do with towards the head. Cephalization, they will form the head in development. Radial symmetry, from the top, you can kind of see to the bottom, they have this symmetry along all sides. So that's radial symmetry going out kind of in a circular direction. Bilateral symmetry, meaning there's symmetry from left to right. And you can see that here. So radial symmetry around it, going out as in a radius or a circle, and bilateral symmetry, they are the same, looking at right and left sides. Here are sponges. They are aquatic filter feeders, so they live in the water. Water will travel in through their pores. They will filter that water, take in what they need, and then the water travels out through the central cavity, through the osculum. Cnidarians are aquatic stinging cells to disable a prey, like jellyfish. You can see here the symmetry shown here is radial symmetry, so kind of traveling out. If you look at it from the top, it would be a radial symmetrical animal. Flatworms have the bilateral symmetry. They're mostly aquatic. Many are internal parasites, meaning they have to live on the inside of their host. Tapeworms, again, bilateral symmetry, meaning if you kind of go down the midline of it, they look the same from right to left sides. Roundworms are aquatic, terrestrial, and internal parasites of almost everything. They can go inside a pig intestine, inside muscle tissue. Not fun to probably have one of those or flatworms inside of you. Mollusks are aquatic and terrestrial. You can see here different types of shells, snails, squids. Segmented worms are mostly aquatic, living underground. The value of terrestrial earthworms is they are very important for creating, kind of aerating the soil or creating holes within the soil so that water can seep down into the ground. So very important. Arthropods are aquatic and terrestrial, so they can live in the water or on earth. They have an exoskeleton, meaning their skeleton is on the exterior of their body. They can be pollinators, disease vectors, meaning they'll be a source for carrying diseases from host to host. Crustaceans are a type of marine arthropod found only in the water. So here we have our lobsters, crabs. And echinoderms are a return to radial symmetry. They're marine animals. So you'll see here kind of the starfish has a type of radial symmetry. Again, these are found underwater. Uni are sea urchins. Another you can see type of echinoderm. You can see the radial symmetry found there as well. Chordates are fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. And these are the characteristics that they have in common. A head, a tail. The notochord will be the area of the kind of nervous system. Pharyngeal slits will eventually form their fish gills. The dorsal hollow nerve cord. So these all have these things in common, and they'll be all the fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. Fishes, they're aquatic. They have their gills for breathing underwater. Amphibians include frogs, toads, salamanders. They can be aquatic or terrestrial, so living in the water and on earth, and they have gills or lungs for breathing, so they can breathe outside the water as well. And a great example of an amphibian is the frog that will start out as a tadpole from eggs and then form a tail and legs swimming underwater and eventually lose the tail and be earthbound as a frog. Reptiles are turtles, snakes, and lizards. They have a shell to protect the egg from drying. We call this an amniotic egg. They have watertight skin to keep the water inside of them. They're cold-blooded, so you'll often see them sunbathing themselves on a rock. Birds are adapted for flight. They have feathers for warmth. Mammals have hair for warmth and mammary glands to nourish their young. So mammals will give birth to their young without eggs, so live birth from the uterus, and they will all have a mammary gland to nourish their young. Domesticated mammals, you can see here, there was a time in the Earth's history when people domesticated animals, not necessarily for pets, but for food sources. But then we've kind of eventually brought them into our homes, even more so domesticating them. Horses, bunnies, rabbits, cats and dogs, and more domesticated birds and mammals. Again, when we say the word domestication, we don't necessarily mean bringing them into your home as a pet, but they're right before kind of the Industrial Revolution, or even much, much before that, animals were being domesticated. That means they were bred for food, whether that was cows, chickens, turkeys, sheep, and pigs. And that's the end of this chapter. Again, answer the questions from the worksheet as best you can. This PowerPoint video might not be all inclusive for the information you need to look for, so feel free to kind of do your own research to answer those questions on the worksheet. And as always, shoot me a message, drop a question in that lab discussion forum if you have questions there, and I will try to look at that throughout the week. I hope you guys are all doing and staying healthy.